Hello, I'm Taylor. I'm a graduate of Hope Center Ministries and now an intern of Hope Center Ministries. So before coming to Hope Center, I was completely lost. I had lost all hope, and I was very deep into my addiction, and my family was torn apart, as well as my own life, and I decided to make a change for my life, and I came to Hope Center, and it truly saved my life. And today, I stand here living proof that Hope Center does work. And as they were speaking on restoring the lives, my life is restored. My family's life is restored. I used with my biological dad, and he is now clean and sober as well, and a believer of Jesus Christ. And then going on with the communities, I know how to go into the community and be a citizen and do the right thing. And going on leadership, so the leadership development, they are always ready to pour into a resident, whether you want to stay or you want to just help while you're in the program. And that was something God had laid on my life when I was in the program, and it's my calling. I have a purpose now because of Hope Center, because of Jesus Christ. And today I'm an intern here in Montana. I started in Portland, Tennessee. And through that, they mentor me and teach me the leadership principles. We go by John Maxwell. Jesus Christ is the greatest leader that ever walked the earth. But we use a lot of different leadership principles to be able to learn the different roles of director and recovery coordinator. And through that, I'm just so honored and blessed to be able to say that I'm a part of this ministry and that it does work. Thank you.
My name is Kayla, and I am a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. And I'm proud to say that through Jesus Christ and the Hope Center, I stand before you today 9 months clean. I was born and raised in a small coal mining town called Harlan County, Kentucky, to Brandy and Tim Bailey. When I was around 2 years old, my maternal grandparents, who I've always called Mom and Dad, adopted me. I have always been and always will be grateful to say that God blessed me with 2 sets of God-fearing, loving, and hardworking parents. Dad was a Pentecostal preacher and a coal miner, and Mom ran a tanning salon. They were always hardworking people, and they made sure to provide everything I needed and wanted. They put me in an amazing private school by the name of Harlan County Christian School to ensure I got the best education possible and learned good Christian values. I was a cheerleader and homecoming queen and a good student. I graduated from Harlan County Christian School in 2008, and I started in a public high school. At this time, I had moved back in with my biological parents, and everything was going good. However, being so sheltered growing up, I took an interest in the things that I was raised and taught to turn away from. By the time I turned 18, I was in full-blown addiction. Getting high was all that mattered. It quickly consumed me. Countless nights, at all times of the night, I would call Dad needing a ride and a place to go, and he would sleepily get out in the cold to come and get me. I quit school 3 days before graduation, and I only have my high school diploma because the school had agreed to let me do a packet over the summer to earn my last 2 credits, and Mom and Dad completed the work for me. I began dating a guy named Seth, and he helped me get somewhat clean, but only through us drinking every single night. I found out I was pregnant around the 1st of February 2013, and by May, Seth had left, and I haven't heard from him since. I had my beautiful baby boy, Jonathan Timothy Hill, on October 24th, 2013, and Jonathan and I lived with my biological parents and had a normal life. When Jonathan was 4 months old, I took a turn in life, and I relapsed. I gave my biological parents custody of Jonathan, so I knew he would be taken care of, and I moved out. I was in and out of jail for years, and Dad was always bailing me out, giving me rides, and still, he loved me unconditionally. Due to Dad's 50-plus years of being a coal miner, he developed complicated black lung. I decided to get sober once again, so I moved to Tennessee with my paternal grandparents and done amazing for 1.5 years. I worked at the Super 8 Motel and done things that normal people do. I had started drinking on the weekends, and eventually I felt lonely even though I had a house full of family members, so I started dating. I picked very poorly in guys, so I quickly relapsed yet again. I moved out and had several very abusive relationships for the next couple of years. Dad's battle with black lung ended on March 3rd of 2019, and he went to be with the Lord. At this time, I had not only been using meth, but cooking it and selling it too. I couldn't leave town for Dad's funeral until I got my drugs for the few days that I would be out of town, so I went and picked them up before I headed back to Kentucky. As I was headed out of town, the sheriff's department busted me, and I went to jail, so I never got to make it to Dad's funeral. I was filled with anger, shame, and guilt, and unbelief that I had gotten so far away from my values. This led me to dive as deep as I ever had in my addiction. I started dating a guy named Justin, who promised to take care of me and help me get my life back on track. Things were good for the first few weeks, then everything changed. He began to be extremely abusive and controlling. He mentally, physically, and emotionally abused me daily. He finally went to jail, so I was on my own this time. Cooking, selling, and intravenously using methamphetamine wasn't enough, so I started smoking crack too. Knowing I had 2 felony warrants for my arrest, I mainly stayed high and operated from inside of my house. I was angry as I ever had been. I was angry with myself and with God. I wanted nothing to do with God. I didn't understand why he would let me get so far that I couldn't find my way back, and why he would take Dad away from me when he did. The sheriff's department busted me yet again on January 31st of 2020, and I spent 4 months in jail, alone with a sober and clear mind. I was as low as I ever had been, and finally decided to surrender my all to the Lord. I prayed, read my Bible, and was seeking the Lord like never before. While I was in jail, I met a girl who recommended the Hope Center to me, and I instantly wanted to be a part of it. I prayed and began asking the Lord for 3 things. First, I asked him to get me away from Justin. Then I proceeded to ask him to get me into the Hope Center, and I asked him to put a stable and sober Christian lady in my life for support. I was released from jail in April, and within 3 days of my release, he answered all 3 of my prayers. I was accepted into the Hope Center in Purcell, Oklahoma, prayer number 1, which was far away from Justin, prayer number 2, and I had a house full of ladies waiting on me, prayer number 3. I arrived in Oklahoma and never felt more at home. I was there around 2 months when the opportunity to transfer to Montana was presented to me. So I prayed for a couple of days, and God gave me the peace that Montana was where he wanted me to go. So within a few more days, I was on my way to Montana. I have grown so much since coming to the Hope Center, not only mentally and emotionally, but also spiritually. I have plenty of work and growing to do, but I am beyond thankful that I'm still alive and here for growth to happen. I will forever be grateful for the Lord's grace and his mercy, and for Dad and my family never giving up on me or turning their backs on me. I will also be grateful for the staff, volunteers, and amazing church, Mountain Family Fellowship at the Hope Center, for giving me the opportunity to have a second chance. I graduate on April 9th of 2021 from the Hope Center, and I will be returning to Tennessee to live with my paternal grandparents and beginning to rebuild my relationships with my family. My goal is to go back to school to become a vet tech and be a good example for my young cousin Cheyenne and the mom to my son Jonathan that I should have been all along. I stand here today grateful and blessed to say that because of God, the staff, volunteers, and the Hope Center, I can now go back home to my family, a new creation in Christ, and be the mother, daughter, and granddaughter my family deserves and God created me to be.
Hi, my name is Kim. This is not my story, but this is God's story. My mom was 16 when she found out she was pregnant with me. This was an unplanned pregnancy, so my grandmother demanded that she have an abortion. However, a few days before the abortion was scheduled, my mom prank called my biological father, and she intervened, and that's how I stand before you today. This was the first and only contact I had with my biological father's family. Since my mom was 16 and then working to get an LVN license, my granny raised me. I wasn't raised in church, but I was raised by the golden rule: do unto others as you want them to do unto you. Show respect, push in your chair, and keep your word. In which I found later in life that sometimes my word was all I had. My younger brother and sister and I lived with my mom and many different boyfriends, and I'd watch them get drunk and beat on her. And then they'd break up, and she'd make the promise that it would just be us four, but then turn right around and have another man in the home. I was 8 years old when my mom met Raymond, whom I call my dad. Raymond was a motor winder and repaired boats, so we always had a boat of our own. And every weekend, if the house was cleaned and our chores were done, we would load up and go to Lake Texoma for the weekend, in which we finally got to experience what a normal life was. The first time I smoked a joint was with my mom, and this was summer of 8th grade. My mom and my dad split up my freshman year, and my mom went back to her previous relationship patterns. My senior year, I got pregnant with my first son, Saya Joe. He's always been a blessing from God. Shortly after Saya was born, I began doing methamphetamines and quickly moved to cooking them. 3 years later, my son Ashton Scott was born. I'm so proud to be his mom. I feel like God gave me my boys to deter me from my destructive paths, but I didn't get that at the time. My favorite pastime was backroading, and Ashton would always be with me. And the one time that he wasn't, I got into my serious car accident in which he probably would have killed him. They thought I was dead on arrival, but I just got scalped and broke my back. Looking back, I feel like that was one of the times God was watching out for me and my family. There were other times I felt God trying to get my attention, but the first time I really wanted to get clean was when my 5-year-old, when Saya was 5 years old, who is now 20, came home from his dad's to give me, and he would only give me a one-armed hug. His dad told him about my addiction, and the disappointment had led me to the decision of seeking treatment. Shortly after, I was admitted to Sarah's house in San Angelo, Texas. This was the beginning of many attempts for sobriety. I wanted to live differently, but I couldn't seem to figure it out. At times I thought I needed to go deeper into my addiction so that I could figure it out. God kept me from that. I even considered trying to do something to get into prison, maybe to do some time. This is the 7th treatment that I've been. I've had 3 suicide attempts. I was feeling like a complete failure. Then a friend told me about the Hope Center. At this time, Cy just made me a new GMA, and I didn't know where my 17-year-old was, but I decided to come anyways. On May 5th, 2020, I drove myself to the Hope Center in Holiday, Texas. A few days later, I was in a van to Montana to help start the center. As of today, I know where Ashton is. I talk to Saya weekly. I have 6 months of sobriety, and I will I'll graduate the Hope Center in May. After graduation, I plan to finish my RN license and work for the Hope Center. Today, I really realize God's bigger than I thought, and He cares about every aspect of my life.
Hi, I'm Mariah. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, and I'm in recovery for addiction. I was born in Butte, Montana in 1993, and at the time of my birth, both of my parents were actually in active addiction. So my father was in prison, and my mother had used throughout her pregnancy. So I was born with mild fetal alcohol syndrome and meth in my system. At 4 years old, I was adopted by people I had been in foster care with previously. And at 6 years old, my biological mother died of complications from a drunk driving accident. Throughout my childhood, my mom put me in dance, soccer, and camps, classes, anything she thought would help me excel through life. And my father instilled a good work ethic in me by having me get a job as soon as I was old enough to. Throughout my teenage years, I was shown the right path, but unfortunately, trauma, attachment issues, and a predisposition to addictive behaviors caused me to act out and seek negative attention. I started using, drinking, fighting. I struggled through 2 high schools and ultimately got my GED, and I moved out before I was 18 years old, which just made getting to school and doing things the right way a lot harder on me. At 18, I found out I was pregnant, and in 2012, at 19 years old, I gave birth to my daughter. I was overjoyed to be her mother, but addiction reared its ugly head in my life again, and I lost custody of her at 3 weeks old. I drowned the guilt and shame of that with use and unhealthy relationships, and that continued for a couple years. I was in and out of jail until I got convicted of 2 felonies, which got me placed in the drug treatment court program. I graduated drug treatment court and discharged my probation sentence, and I immediately relapsed on alcohol. I spent 2 years maintaining but drinking the whole time, and this led me to relapse on meth. At this time, I knew what recovery looked like for me, so I put myself in treatment twice in 6 months, but I didn't listen to the aftercare suggestions, and I didn't have God in my life, so I quickly relapsed. In May of 2019, I met the most abusive man I've ever been with, and I got addicted to IV heroin use. I didn't know how to escape my situation, and I felt very isolated, scared, and brainwashed. In March 2020, God answered my prayers, and by that I mean I was arrested on 2 more felony charges and forced to detox in a jail cell. I was released in April to come to the Hope Center when it first opened, and I was here for 2 months when what I believe was an addiction to toxic relationships and an effort to go be with that same man caused me to self-sabotage and be kicked out of the program. I spent 2 more months with him and using heroin and meth, but there was a difference this time, and it was that I knew that I had a safe place to go when I was ready to change, and I knew who to call when I needed help. So in August, he got indicted on federal charges, so I finally felt comfortable with turning myself back into jail and detoxing again and coming back to the Hope Center. I've been here for 2.5 months, and I've been baptized, and I'm a new creation through Jesus Christ. I owe my life to God and the women who love me enough to help me change at the Hope Center. And I hope to excel in my program and help others experience God's grace and mercy just as I have through the program. Thanks for listening.